It is now my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who is Neil Hamilton. I'm sure most of you have heard of him. Many of you will know him. And he is a member of the Welsh Assembly. And he is also, as you rightly point out, sir, you beat me to it, the leader of the UKIP group in the Welsh Assembly. If you'd like to come up, please, Neil. Thank you.
Well, boneddigion, boneddigesau, bonedach I gyd. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. Well, I came on to the platform to the strains of Men of Harlech, and the words of that song are very apposite to where we find ourselves today in Wales. Men of Harlech, march to glory, victory is hovering o'er ye, bright-eyed freedom stands before ye, hear ye not her call? Well, on the 23rd of June last year, Wales certainly did hear the call of bright-eyed freedom, because 52.5% of the population of Wales voted to leave the European Union. And another verse in the song is also very appropriate, thinking of the Eurocrats. Upon their soil we never sought them, love of conquest hither brought them, but this lesson we have taught them, Cambria ne'er can yield. But the establishment in Wales, just as in the rest of the United Kingdom, don't seem to have learned that lesson, do they? There are 60 members of the Welsh Assembly, 29 of them are Labour, every single one of them was a Remainer. There are 12 Plaid Cymru members, every single one of them was a Remainer. There was one Liberal, she was a Remainer. There were 11 Tories elected, and 7 of them were Remainers. There were only 4 Brexiteers amongst them. So adding those to the 7 UKIPers who were elected in May last year, there were only 11 out of the 60 who actually support what the majority of the Welsh people wanted, and the Remainers have been doing everything that they possibly can to try to frustrate the will of the people in Wales, just as they have in the rest of the United Kingdom. Because, that mirrors what's happening in the Cabinet. If you wonder why the so-called negotiation process that's apparently going on across the English Channel is such a shambles, then just look at the Cabinet. 16 out of them were Remainers. The 23 members of the Cabinet and 16 of Theresa May's Cabinet, including herself, actually don't believe in the process that is now currently underway. So, of course, their heart's not in it. And if their heart's not in it, then they won't do the best job for Britain. Theresa May, as you all know, recently made a speech in Florence. Well, of course, she chose the wrong place in which to make that speech. It should have been in Munich. The traditional city in which weak British Prime Ministers go to appease European dictators. And in fact, 79 years ago, on the 30th of September 1938, 79 years ago today, Chamberlain signed his his agreement with Hitler that effectively was the greatest act of appeasement that we have seen. And when Winston Churchill made his great Philippic speech in the House of Commons denouncing that, I think he actually foresaw what was happening today in the so-called negotiations with the EU, because he said the tactic which Hitler employed, which is exactly the same as we see from Monsieur Barnier and Mr. Juncker, is that £1 was demanded at pistol point. When it was given, £2 were demanded at pistol point. Finally, the dictator consented to take £1, 17 shillings and sixpence, and the rest in promises of goodwill for the future. And So for all Mrs. May's attempt to appease the Eurocrats in Brussels, they have contemptuously thrown her offer back in her face and demanded yet more and more. Guy Verhofstadt, the member of the European Parliament who is the European Parliament's chief negotiator, apparently. He's not as nice as he looks, is he? But said this, that Mrs. May chose the Italian city of Florence because of its political history of backstabbing and betrayal. He said to an audience at the LSE recently, "I think she chose Florence because Florentine politics in the 15th century made her feel at home. Backstabbing, betrayal, noble families fighting for power. It's an environment that she recognized fairly well." Well, I can't think of a better description, actually, of the European Commission, which Mr. Verhofstadt so reveres. And in spite of all the concessions that Mrs. May has offered, Monsieur Barnier's response was, "It'll still be weeks or months before Brexit talks can move on to trade, and I'll believe it when I see it." As Steve Crowther pointed out yesterday, the great Yanis Varoufakis has analysed in ice-cold detail the techniques that the Eurocrats employ to get what they want. He says, the parallel with the Brexit is the tactic of stalling negotiations. They will get you on the sequencing. First, there's the price of the divorce to sort out before they'll talk about free trade for the future. They'll give you the EU runaround. You won't always know exactly who to talk to, and that is deliberate. That is why we have got absolutely nowhere, will get nowhere. We need to abort these negotiations now and get on with... and get on with the real business of talking to the 85% of the world that is not part of the EU. What a pathetic shambles of a government we've got, and what a useless Prime Minister. If her negotiating skills are as good as her skills at winning general elections, then I certainly fear for the outcome. She's already given away another £20 billion of our money, more than we need to do, for an extra 2 years membership of the EU that we voted not to have. She's already accepted the jurisdiction of the European Court during that period. Everything that the people of Britain voted by a majority to reject, she has actually promoted. I certainly wouldn't use Mrs. May to negotiate a house purchase for me, because she'd start off by offering the asking price, and that would be seen as a sign of weakness by the vendor, who would then double it. And then she would make a compromise at about 75% more than we originally started out. But of course, Carwyn Jones, the First Minister of Wales, thinks this is a step in the right direction. That's what he's called it. Well, I think Disraeli had it right. A 19th century leader of the House of Commons who was a Liberal, he said, if a traveller from afar were to be told that Lord John Russell were leader of the House of Commons, he might well begin to understand how it came about that the Egyptians worshipped an insect. Because Theresa May has performed miracles in her time as Prime Minister. She's made Jeremy Corbyn look electable. And I must say, Corbyn mania is extraordinary, isn't it? How it is that this moth-eaten Father Christmas lookalike could appeal to young people is utterly beyond rational understanding. But apparently there's a bottomless sack of goodies that he can dip into and dish out, which costs nothing. But anyway, we are fighting against this in the Welsh Assembly, and my colleagues, AMs in the UKIP group, Caroline Jones, the MEP for South West Wales, Michelle Brown, our MEP for North Wales, Gareth Bennett, our MEP for South Wales Central, and David Rowlands, former chairman of Wales UKIP as well, our MEP for South East Wales, and myself, are battling day in and day out not just to achieve Brexit, but also we're operating there in a domestic political consequence. So we're actually a template for what UKIP will be doing once we have finally got out of the tentacles of the EU in years to come. And we'll need to do this in the United Kingdom. We'll then be operating purely in a domestic political framework. Of course, we were more than 5 to start with. We lost one member recently in Mark Reckless, who has defected back to the Conservative Party. It's difficult to understand quite why this happened, because he told me that he had no personal disagreement with me. Indeed, he had no actual disagreement with UKIP policy. It would be surprising if he did, because he actually wrote our manifesto on which he was elected in Wales. Yet he defected to a party which until a few months ago he was vigorously denouncing, and which opposes many of the policies that he himself vigorously promoted. The Welsh Conservatives are actually even against grammar schools. You know, they're even worse than Theresa May in that respect. They're against cutting the foreign aid budget to put it into the health service. They're in favour of green taxes that are the greatest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich that this country has seen in many a long year. And most of all, of course, the Tories are against a clean Brexit, as we have seen in the way these negotiations have been conducted over the last few months. Let's be clear about Mark Reckless, who caused a by-election when he resigned from the Conservative Party as an MP and was re-elected in that by-election. He now has no moral right to continue sitting in the Welsh Assembly in a UKIP seat. He didn't win his seat, UKIP did. And so, frankly, I regard him as no better than a common thief. And he has stolen not just our seat, he's stolen the seat that was awarded to our party by the people of South East Wales. He should resign and make way for the next UKIPper on our list in that region. Now, our aim in the Welsh Assembly is to confront the cosy Cardiff Bay consensus. And I must say, we do seem to have ruffled a few feathers since we've been there. According to Leanne, I'm a member of the far right. According to Joyce Watson, who's a Labour AM, we stood on a platform of hate. We've been accused of racism, sexism, because I made a mild joke about Kirsty Williams, the leader of the Welsh Liberals, in the Assembly. She leads only herself because she's the only member. And others. I made a mild joke about Leanne Wood and her sustaining a Labour government in office in Cardiff when they were rejected by the people in the Assembly election in May of last year. And I called them political concubines in Carwyn Jones's harem, which seemed like a... It seemed just like a mild witticism, but of course they went into overdrive of outrage at that. But then when I'm insulted from such deranged sources, I can only regard that as a compliment. The more they scream and shout at us, the more it confirms that we're actually doing the right thing and we're going to carry on. You know, the Labour Party's been in office in Cardiff for 20 years, ever since the National Assembly was created back in 1999. Yet they only won 33% of the vote in the election last year. We have a proportional representation system in Wales, but it's certainly not perfect. They got 50% of the seats virtually, with 33% of the vote. So they have no mandate from the Welsh people overall to be the government in Cardiff. That's why I wanted to turf them out in a kind of rainbow coalition with Plaid Cymru and the Conservatives. And we did block the formation of the Welsh government last year, but then Plaid Cymru under Leanne Wood bottled out because actually she's just a left-wing socialist, and like all the rest of them, the cosy Cardiff Bay consensus is what UKIP is there to bust up. And just to show you what we've been doing, last night we put out a party political broadcast in Wales, and because you won't have got that in Torquay except on your computers, I thought you might like to have a look at it this morning, and we're now going to show that on the screen.
This is a beautiful country. It has a rich history and culture which we are proud of. This is Wales, the land of our fathers and a jewel of the United Kingdom. It deserves the best government. 20 years ago, the nation decided to create the National Assembly for Wales and devolve powers from Westminster. Ever since, Welsh Labour has ruled the roost, and the past 10 years have seen more powers devolved to it. The Welsh Assembly is soon to become a parliament, which will raise its own taxes on us. In 1999, we were last but one in the UK table of incomes. By now, Wales has sunk to the bottom of the league and is the poorest part of the United Kingdom, thanks to Labour. Wales is bottom of the class of UK nations in maths, reading and science. History shows Labour is incompetent and irresponsible with your money. Do you know that almost £10,000 was spent hiring a private jet so Carwyn Jones and his cronies could see Wales at the last Euros? This wasted money should have been spent on schools and hospitals. Labour has no plan other than to tax us more. So let's break up the cosy Cardiff Bay establishment, sideline the trivial pursuits of Welsh Labour, and get Wales moving with lower taxes and a stronger economy. Wales has voted to leave the European Union, and UKIP was the only major political party that campaigned for this. Now, both the Conservatives in Westminster and Labour in Cardiff are committed to a so-called transitional deal, which might hold us in the single market, in Europe, and under European Union laws for many years to come. The Brexit we worked so hard to achieve is now threatened by both wings of the political establishment. They think they know better than you. UKIP is the only party that can be trusted to deliver Brexit and defend you from the arrogance of the political class. See that number? It's getting bigger and bigger, isn't it? It's how much the UK national debt has increased since you started watching. According to the Taxpayers Alliance, the debt increases at a rate of £2,159.45 per second. Currently, total UK public debt is almost £2 trillion and rising. Both Conservative and Labour governments are to blame. This must not go on. It's economic madness, and it must end. UKIP is the only party with a plan to balance the budget and remove the chain of debt from the necks of our children. Tell the Crachach you're fed up of the same old excuses and give UKIP your support for the Wales you deserve. UKIP for the nation.
And there's our slogan at the end, UKIP for the nation. Now, Wales is a nation, but the United Kingdom is also a nation. And a nation is a nation when it feels itself to be a nation. And there isn't actually any conflict between being a proud Welshman and being a proud Briton. And we in UKIP, I think, are the only ones who truly believe in national independence. Plaid Cymru, the supposed bogus nationalists, certainly don't believe in national independence. They think they're better governed by unelected technocrats in Brussels than by elected politicians in Cardiff or Westminster. Some nationalist party, that is. And the Tories, of course, are so weak-kneed and limp-wristed that they will never get the national independence that we deserve from the Eurocrats. So only UKIP is actually fighting for what the British people and the Welsh people together voted for in the referendum last year. UKIP is the true, indeed the only voice of national independence amongst mainstream political parties, because we believe in that shared national destiny that Bishop Michael was talking about yesterday, and the continuity of our culture, which is threatened by excessive immigration and political correctness. So we're going to carry on the battle in Wales. We are the standard bearers. Once the MEPs disappear in 2019, then UKIP in Wales, in the Welsh Assembly, will be the only parliamentary representation we've got, because the London Assembly's powers are much more restricted than ours. We're getting tax-raising powers in Wales, God help the Welsh people, with those in the hands of Carwyn Jones and his chums in Cardiff. But we are making the case for a low-tax enterprise economy, which is going to take Wales from the bottom of the league in the income tables of the nations of the United Kingdom and the regions of England, and send it going up. In the last 20 years, we've gone backwards. Wales was second from bottom in 1999. Now we are actually bottom of the league, the poorest part of the United Kingdom. That is not an accolade that I think the Welsh people deserve. So we have real things to fight for. We have real things to fight for outside the European Union. You know, our unique message is one that we must take to the people all over our country, and we must go beyond the European issue which brought us into existence so that we make the reality of the Great Britain that we all want to see. Thank you so much.